Hi folks, I'm going to show you how to start your coil project. The first thing I like to do is prepare a project board. Once in a while we'll have project boards that we use that we are just going to use the board as is. And that's really great for things that you don't mind if they dry out a little bit, such as anything on the wheel. However, when we're doing hand building projects, they normally take a little bit longer, so we want to actually put a layer of plastic onto the board to help prevent the board soaking in too much water, which then also makes our projects dry quicker. So sometimes you'll find a project board that has plastic on it already. As long as the plastic is intact and it looks good, you're free to use that. However, if you haven't found one or they're all gone, you're going to have to make your own. So it's pretty easy. What I have is I've taken a plastic bag that's from our big container, and I have the end gathered where it's like the very bottom of the plastic bag, and I'm just going to cut that end off. And then you open it up and it's just like a giant tube of plastic. And so I can take that and I can run my scissors down the side of the plastic bag, and it turns into a giant sheet. And so you can share this giant sheet with quite a few people. It's quite large now. And I only really need a small area. So you can cut apart one bag and it can probably be used for, 5 to 10 people depending on the size of your board. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut the plastic bag to a more appropriate size, and I'm going to use some tape, and I'm just going to kind of wrap it neatly, kind of like a present, so that it doesn't actually cause any uneven bottom. And then I would seal this with tape. Okay? So then your project board is good to go. Alright? So I like to get that started, and then I just put that off to the side. Now let's get started on the actual clay part. I have a chunk of clay. Right now the clay is a little on the sticky side, so I'm going to wedge a little bit of it. And I'm just trying to get it so that the clay is at a good consistency. So there we go. My first thing is I want to start to make the base for my coil pot. Now some of you might decide to do a really interesting shaped base. It doesn't have to be a circle, and that's totally fine. What I have here is I'm showing you how to roll out a slab at your tables. And so on the very top of the storage shelving for all the tools, I have some slab sticks. They're just 1/4 inch thick pieces of wood, and you need 2 of them per side. So I have 4 slab sticks, and just by layering 2 1/4 inch, I have created a 1/2 inch thickness. And what that's going to do is it's going to kind of rest on the sides, and I'm going to use a rolling pin to help roll out the clay. And just if you've ever rolled out cookies, you want to flip that clay over so it stretches. And if you need to, you could rotate it this way so it stretches the other way if you really need a kind of long and skinny base or whatever. And eventually you're just going to hit the slab sticks, and it's going to prevent it from going any thinner. Okay? So you just want to roll out a bunch of clay so that it's about the size of your base. Now, I don't like to get the bases too big. I would say max would be about 4.5 inches, because the idea is that you're going out with your form and then coming in. So if you are trying to go as wide as your biggest part of the pot, your foot is going to turn out kind of big and your pot's going to go huge. So I actually think that a smaller foot works better. Okay, so I do have some circle templates, and I'll put these on the front table if you want to use that. If you're kind of smart and slightly lazy like me, you could probably roll out one and then kind of portion out, not cut right in the middle, but portion out. Maybe you can get a few people's bottoms started from one slab roller. So, maybe talk sweetly to your table mates and work together as a team. Before I cut out, I want to do a little compression. So what I'm doing is I'm using a rib tool, and I'm going over the surface. It looks like maybe I'm just smoothing, and in a way you are, but the more important thing is that you're actually providing a little pressure downward. You've stretched that clay out with the roller, and so what we want to do is compact that clay back down. So using a rib just to compress is a great way to do that. That helps make your base stronger. If you skip this step, you might be okay, but doing this step just makes your base much more steady, much stronger. It's a good thing to get used to. Every time you do a slab, you're going to want to compress the base. Okay, so I have my piece, my size started. And again, like, it doesn't have to be a circle for your base. Your base could be any shape. If that's the shape that you want your container to turn into, then that's the shape that your base has to be. It doesn't have to be a circle. If you are doing something symmetrical, I would try to maybe even use a ruler so that your edges are even and straight, if that's something important to you. So I have my base. This is just another example. I'm going to demo on this one. Okay. Yes, it looks a little thick, but for your base, it's holding everything up above it. So yeah, we kind of want a little bit thicker base because these pieces can be a little on the big side. So I'm just going to kind of put this over on my project board for now because I need to make room so I can roll my first coil. Okay. So I want to kind of clean off my area, return my tools and supplies that I don't need. The main tool that you'll probably need to start with is either a needle tool, or I have these, this is actually a scoring tool, because you're going to want to attach your first few coils with scoring, just to help make a good sturdy base. Okay, so when I roll a coil, I like to make sure that my palms are kind of doing most of the work and it stretches it out. I'm not pushing down. And it's going to take some practice. And you should be able to do this pretty quick. I know students will maybe, I've had a student say to me, well, it takes me an entire hour to make like 3 coils. And I go, okay, well then your process probably isn't working for you. We have to figure out a more efficient process, a more efficient way to roll your coils. Okay? So here I've rolled quite a large coil. It's about the thickness of my finger. Any thinner, you're going to have some issues with it collapsing, especially if it's one of the first few coils. Okay. So I'm going to get that coil. I notice that it's a little weak here. I'm just going to kind of squish that together. No need to like start all over. Okay. So that's about the size I want. And I want to score to get this first coil attached really well. So you can see why that tool works so great. And I'm going to do it to my coil itself. Now this clay is really nice and soft, so I can get away with not adding slip. Okay. We just want to create a little texture so that these two pieces of clay kind of intermingle and lock together. Okay. So when I blend a coil, I want to support the opposite side that I'm blending. So I'm going to start on the inside here, and I'm just borrowing a little clay with my thumb and blending down. Not too difficult. You'll see why you want a thicker coil, just because you do borrow a little bit. You end up thinning out the wall a little bit by just blending and attaching your coils. So if you go too thin for your coil initially, your walls are going to be too thin in the end. So I'm just blending. I like to blend down and up, just because I'm trying to combine these together. Okay. Now just for the first one, I'm going to do an inner coil, just so that I don't have problems with it collapsing. Quite frequently, quite frequently, students will forget this step, and when they're up to like coil level 5 or 6, their first one actually has dropped and sunk down because it's not strong enough to hold everything. So I'm just going to do a second coil just in the bottom. I'm going to blend those two together. Some people like to do it this way, or if you just do an extra thick coil as your first one, that's another way you could do it. Okay. So you notice that it's not perfect right now. That's okay. It's just well attached. So then it's a process of just rolling coils and stacking them up, and you just have to figure out the length of your coil so that it creates the the walls that you want. So if you want to start to go out, you're going to lay that coil just slightly outside the first one so that it kind of hangs off just a little bit, like so. So it just kind of hangs off the edge just a little bit. And then you're going to want to still blend, but just notice the angle of my hand on the outside changes for the support. Instead of being completely vertical, it's kind of at an angle. Okay. And we blend both inside and outside. I also kind of like the project board because I can rotate my piece a lot quicker. It's not stuck to the table. Any trick that makes things go easier and quicker. I like it. Now, if you wanted to start going out more dramatically, quicker, you just have to make sure that each layer you're going out to the right degree. So you're laying it slightly over the edge of the next one. If you are going in, you're going to do the opposite. You're going to set it somewhat inside the coil and make your coils a little bit smaller. Okay. And that's the start.